go.
You ready to go? Okay. Well, I don't know where to start with that trip around the world here, but anyway, we will start. I still notice that Mike did not dispute the validity of this, so keep that in mind. I want to talk with you now about the money that he has talked about. The reasons that are usually given for consolidating the districts is that we can save money, and we could save a lot of money. And, you know, the first that I heard about this, the estimates coming out of Columbia and other places was we can save $35 to $90 million, and then they upped it to $127 million. Then they upped it to $185 million, and then some fellow did a report from some kind of study. He said, well, we could save $338 million. And this year, most of the people running for public office jumped on the bandwagon and they said, we're for it because we could save millions of dollars. And they like to say that, don't they? Because that's what people want to hear, that we're going to save millions of dollars. It could be done. If you had been at the first two debates, you would know this already, but most of us probably, when we hear that, it's the $1 million that catches our ears, isn't it? I mean, that sounds really good. But the key word in all of these promises is not the millions, it's the little old word could. They didn't say we're going to do this, that it'll happen. We guarantee this will happen. They said could. Well, now that little word could be used in any number of ways. In fact, you could say there would be no savings. Same word. Or you could say that there would actually be millions of dollars in more cost. You could say that. So to look at what people say, if you're not careful about what they say, no one had said that they would save this money. It could be. So let me ask you a question. In baseball, could a batter hit a home run every time he went to the bat? Could he? Well, yes, theoretically he could. But does it ever happen? No, it doesn't. You know, that reminds me of a story that I heard one time about a preacher. He would get up in the pulpit, and before he began to speak, he would bow his head like this and just have a couple of minutes of silence. Then he'd raise his head and began preaching. He had a little 4-year-old daughter in the audience, and she kept watching this, and he did it week after week after week. And finally, one Sunday, as they were riding home from church, the little girl said, said, Daddy, what are you doing when you go up there and you put your head down and you don't say anything? He said, well, honey, I'm praying. So she thought for a little bit. She says, well, what are you praying for? He said, well, honey, I'm praying that God will give me a good sermon. They went on down the road a little further, and the girl had one more question. She said, well, Daddy, why doesn't God ever do that? I think that's about like all of these promises that we could save all of this money. Where is the evidence? Where is the data that Mike likes to talk about that has proven that in the past 20 years, that in consolidations, that millions of dollars have been saved? It's not there. It's not there. Now, one of the things that we need to think about in regard to that, Mike has, and I do give him credit for saying concerning his bill that it was unlikely that there would be significant savings. He did say that, and I appreciate that. But then he keeps talking about all the teachers that we could hire if that happens. And that's another word, isn't it? If that happens. So we need to consider that. But To really know about the savings in the bill that Mike passed, I want you to listen carefully to this. This is actually in the bill on page 5, section 6. It says, in creating the consolidated district, it is anticipated that there will be savings in the total district level administrative cost from the former individual districts. Therefore, administrative cost in the district, that is the new single district, must be less than the combined administrative cost of both districts by July 1st, 2021. That's in the bill. They mandate savings, don't they? They said that it must be less than the two combined prior to consolidation. Well, now let's say that $60 million was the amount of the two combined districts. So they got to come under that, don't they? How much? Would 1 penny less be less than the other total? Would that be less? If so, 1 penny would meet the mandate of the bill. That's the only savings that are mandated. So let me ask you this question then. Would it make sense to weaken our liberties, disrupt local control of schools, destroy community identity and harmony, all for a mandated saving of 1 penny? Now, we had trouble coming up with a coin when we were trying to flip, but a penny is not a lot of money, is it? Now, also in the first debate, and Mike has linked it again here tonight, is that somehow having two school districts is a deterrent to growth, and so we need to think about that and take that into consideration. Well, let's look at that. First of all, when businesses are coming into Lawrence County, they send out a scout team. They look over the place, they talk to people, they observe things, and they decide whether or not they want to come or not come. So suppose they come out and they look and they see everything and they find everything and they say, okay, we think that's the place. We want to invest our money in Lawrence County. But then they're having their final meeting. And somebody says, wait, I found out something bad. They have 2 school districts instead of 1. And the board says, well, we can't go there. They've got 2 school districts instead of 1. You're probably thinking, that's nonsense. And it is. A business would not make such a decision based on whether or not we have 1 or 2 school districts. Are they interested in education? You better believe it. But what they are interested in is the quality of the education, not the number of the school districts. Now, again, there is another test to apply to this to prove it. If we could find 2 counties that are alike in size, population, and everything, and see how each of them fared in getting new investment, when one of them has a single district and the other one has 2 districts, we'd learn something. There is such a comparison. Kershaw County and Lawrence County are twins almost in every statistical way, in area and population and number of workers and all of that. Now, between 2015 and 2017, Kershaw County had $225 million invested in new business investments. They had the 1 school district. Lawrence County, in that same period of time, had $386 million of new investment, 42% more than the county that had a single combined district. Trying to link consolidation to growth and business investment it doesn't meet the common sense test or what has occurred in the real world. So we need to think about that. The last part on this has to do with the business saving model. And a lot of businessmen are for this, and they say, well, you know, we can come up with a plan and we can save this money. I agree. A good businessman can come up with a plan to save this. The problem's not with the plan. The problem is with, well, who executes the plan. A football coach, the best football coach in the world, can come up with a game plan that is a surefire winner. But if government football players are, let me get my tongue straight now. If the players are government bureaucrats, it is doomed to fail. And so we need to remember that it's not businessmen that are executing the plan. It's government bureaucrats. Thank you.
Just made my next point for me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Bureaucrats. That's the only ones that scream and say you can't save money with a consolidation. When two airlines consolidate, they save money and they become more efficient. When AT&T and other companies merge, they save money, they become more efficient. The only one that says it costs more to consolidate or merge are bureaucrats. Appreciate you making my point for me. You know, the bottom line, whether it's a saving of a penny, the bill said there has to be a savings. It's talking about the merger. If there's no savings, there would not be a merger. That's the point of what the bill was saying. Although that bill doesn't matter, I told you that bill's dead. It died at the end of the year, and I'm not bringing it back. Keith keeps whipping a dead horse, talking about consolidation as if it's alive and moving forward. The only place that consolidation's moving forward is on the state level with the Department of Education at this point in time. Not even an issue. When I agreed to these debates, the bill was still alive. But I have held up my end and said I would go through with these debates. The last one, my brother-in-law was dying in Virginia. My wife had gone up and asked me to come up there. Called Keith, said I can't make it. I'm gonna have to go to Virginia. It turns out I got to wait a couple of days to do the debate anyway. But we could not change plans. It's too far into it. D-Day was put off on June 5th because conditions weren't right. The greatest invasion of amphibious invasion in history was put off one day. I believe that debate could have been put off. When you become so focused on something like that, you lose sight of the big picture. The big picture, Keith keeps talking about the consolidation being part of saving money and business coming in. No, in the beginning I went through the whole spiel of how we got to this point with all of the maps, with all of the planning, with all of the data, with all of the numbers. There's no need at this point to do that. Because we have reached a point that I'm not moving the blooming bill forward. It's dead. I read Don Quixote when I was in high school. Read it again when I was in college. Don Quixote was a Spanish knight, for those of you that may not know. He wasn't actually a Spanish knight, he thought he was. And he became so obsessed with throwing chivalry out and bringing back a long past time that he began to charge windmills thinking they were dragons. That's what happens when you become too obsessed with something. especially something that's a moot point at this time. You know, 1 penny common sense, I agree. Any savings is common sense, and we should be operating that way. The only reason that I could see we're still having these debates is that Keith thinks I'm lying, saying I'm not bringing the bill back. I don't have a history in the 16 years I've been in the General Assembly of lying to other legislators, to lobbyists, to my constituents, or anyone else. And I said the bill is dead. It's dead. Unless Danny Burton or Mark Willis bring it back. If you want consolidation, you gotta take it to those guys. Folks, I said at this point I was gonna open it up to questions, exactly what I'm gonna do. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I only had one earlier, had one in the, when we took a break, said, why can't you put this to the people? Let the people vote on it. Because this is a legislative state. The only ones that can make that decision is the legislature. Did I handle it wrong? Yeah, I'll admit that. I didn't consult the school districts. I didn't consult the school boards. And if I were pushing the bill again, I would not now. Because I know exactly what their point is and what their stance is. But would I come to you, the folks that are in this room, the folks that have been to the others debates, would I have put it to you in greater detail? Absolutely. I should have. I should have shown the points of savings. We could go down the list and show the savings. I told you, one superintendent's salary would put 5 starting teachers in the classroom. That's a significant savings because it can reduce first grade classes if you wanted to do that with it. That's significant. But I was asked, why can't you put it to the people? I can't even put an information referendum to you. The county can, but the state does not. I have to make that decision. That's what I get elected for. It's our form of government, a representative form of government. Telling you I screwed up with the way I approached it, I still believe it's the right thing to do. That's not ideology. It's not dogmatic. It is simple fact. No more questions? Then I'm through.
Excuse me, Mike, I want to thank you for making my point. When you said the airlines consolidated and look what they did and AT&T did, those are not government agencies that are running that. So thank you for making my point. I want to talk about some of the things that were in the bill, and let me say also, Mike has said that he is not bringing it up, but he still thinks it's the right thing to do. And I assume then that if he could persuade someone else to bring it up, that he would still be on board.
Who would that be? Who would that be?
Well, you have 2 colleagues that you mentioned, and I don't know how much weight you have with them, but
Well, they ran like rabbits.
well, good for them. But anyway, a lot of times people don't pay careful attention to how things work in Columbia. There's kind of a pattern down there. When they have a bill that they know the public's not going to like, they'll introduce it. In fact, Mike told me this before. They'll introduce it, and the first year it won't go anywhere, and so they'll drop it. But then they'll bring it up a second time. And they might get a little further then. But there's not enough, so they drop it again. They bring it up a third time, and it still doesn't pass. but they don't give up the bone, they keep chewing on it. And finally, they'll get it passed just about every time. You remember the gas tax bill that was passed recently? The large increase in that? Mike said that he had worked 4 years to get that bill passed, isn't that right?
Which bill?
The gas tax bill that was
I
passed.
said I had been involved with that for 4 years.
That's right.
Because it took us 4 years to get all the data in place like it was supposed to be. Not
Okay.
that we kept bringing it
Y'all,
back.
y'all couldn't figure out how much the percentage of the gas tax was gonna be raised? Is that the data you're talking
No,
about?
we dropped it from 32 cent that was originally recommended to what actually did pass.
Okay.
Which was what was needed.
All right. The other reason for having this debate, let's say it is moot, when things happen again, and they could, isn't it better to be armed ahead of time with the facts so that you can make an intelligent decision about it? So this is actually an educational process. It should be if we both stick to the subject. Now, on the bill that Mike passed through the House and would be the law were it not for the citizens, on Section 8, page 6, it required that a district transition committee would be established. This committee would have control over nearly every transition decision, and these decisions will affect the county far beyond the consolidation date that had been set. And they had a whole bunch of people that were going to be on the board, and I'm not going to read them all to you. But when you get to the bottom of the list, every person on that committee was either a government employee or official or was appointed by one. You know, when people get into government, sometimes, I'm not saying everyone, but sometimes they're in there so long, they think that government people are the font of all wisdom. And I don't think that history will prove that to be true. And so these people would have the control and the decisions on all of those things. Now, I also want to talk about that and from the standpoint that in making those decisions, one of the things that it was said in the bill on page 6, section 8, that committee could organize and plan for the change over to the single district. And here's what they could do in doing that. They could enter into contracts to effectuate these purposes and to perform other related matters pertaining to it. So what does that mean? It means they would have the power to enter into contracts, to borrow money, to obligate the citizens to pay for it. Suppose they, in their infinite wisdom, decided that, well, the first thing that we do what?
They wouldn't be able to borrow money.
Well, that's a contract, isn't it?
It's already said in another law. You can't, even
It's-
the school boards are limited on how they can borrow money.
It's not said in this law, this bill. Okay. But anyway, they could decide to spend $50 million for a new district administration office. What's to stop them? And then, finally, we talk about the millions of dollars again, and again, Mike has reiterated, you know, there won't be savings hardly, but we're gonna hire all these new teachers from these savings. What happens when you have 2 superintendents and you change it to 1? What does this new superintendent of the whole district, I mean the whole county, what does he do? He hires an assistant superintendent, doesn't he? And then he says, well, I need an assistant superintendent for Lawrence too. So the savings, and there have been studies about this, and I discussed this in a previous debate, that the notion that there are actual savings is pretty much a myth. And again, I have asked the superintendent of education to give me some statistics that show how much has been saved in the past. And I've gotten no response. And no one else has been able to give me that information. And then finally, on the consolidation itself, there's a lot of things involved in this consolidation. You are dissolving one kind of corporate entity. You're actually dissolving two, and then you're creating a new one. Do lawyers work for free? How much does that cost? And all of the other things that would be associated with that, insurance and everything, would certainly come into the millions of dollars. So if you really want to save money on the issue of consolidation, don't do it, because you would save all of those costs. So let me summarize not only this debate, but all of the debates. I believe that I have shown, and at least slightly, Mike has agreed that our liberties will be affected if that happens. I believe also that we have demonstrated that the promise of millions saved is far different from performance of millions saved, and that the cost of consolidation will not be cheap. Is that what you call a no-brainer? Thank you for your time, and thank you for your interest in this important subject. That's it. We ended early tonight. Thanks to Mike. Thank you, Mike. And